African CEOs are the world's most optimistic business leaders. This is according to the YPO Global Pulse Index for Africa, which increased sharply by 6.4 points in the fourth quarter of last year. Kutso Mampuela, who's chairman of the Young Presidents Organization for the Africa region, joins us now for more detail on this. Kutso, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Let's drill down into the detail here. I mean, you're talking about the Global Pulse Confidence Index. What exactly are we looking at? What do you survey?
We survey among all YPO members from around the world, YPO, WPO members, which amounts to about 20,000 members from around the world in 130 countries. And we get a sample of approximately 2,400 CEOs participate in this survey to give us a sense of their own sentiment regarding how their business plans are going to evolve going forward.
Were you surprised by the fact that Africa's business confidence sits the highest in the world?
I think the level of optimism surprised me somewhat, pleasantly so, I must quickly add, because we know that the world is finally focusing on Africa as an investment destination, but the extent to which the optimism has been sustained has been quite pleasing to me, so I was pleasantly surprised.
If you look at the growth rates in Africa, generally 5%, 6%, we talk every morning to Kenya, and there are a lot of companies there that are growing. Do these young presidents, I also want you to define what a young president is, who are these guys and girls, is there a correlation between where they are? In other words, because their companies and their sectors are doing well in those countries, they're naturally more optimistic.
Absolutely, it is very much attached to the members and where they are operating from. In fact, our survey now, if there is something to be criticized about, is that it's far more biased towards South Africa, because most of our members are based in South Africa, not necessarily South African, but are based in South Africa. And you find that they express the sentiments as per their own personal experience in the area or the region or the country that they do business.
That would seem to go against the general pessimism and gloom in South Africa, because there are a lot of things, the stock market's running hard, but there are a lot of things that we're worrying about at the moment.
Well, the result last quarter reflected those sentiments. The points were about 3 points below where the index is pointing at today, and that was in part because of the protest for service delivery, the Marikana situation, the aftermath thereof, and of course at that time we were all very concerned about what Mangaung, the ANC elective conference, was going to bring about. That was reflected, and given that those issues seems to be dealt with ongoing and Mangaung has come and gone, we are seeing the optimism surging again.
What's interesting is that optimism is actually flowing through to strategy and what these CEOs plan to do in terms of capital spend moving forward. Interestingly enough, we've got plans to boost capital spending, driving the fixed investment component of the index. Take us through that and, looking specifically at where money's looking to be spent.
Absolutely. I think this has been a pleasing development, and we spoke about this the last quarter, where we looked at the pessimism that was prevailing at the time regarding Asia, specifically China, because there was a slight slowdown. But I pointed out at the time that the most encouraging thing is the fact that there was capital spending being put into the economy of the country. And today, Asia, and China in particular, China and Japan, are the driving forces behind optimism as far as Asian countries are concerned. And the same applies here in Africa. We find that most CEOs are saying we're going to be putting more money into infrastructure particularly, and there is going to be money invested also as far as energy as well as the mineral resources is concerned. And that ultimately in the long run tend to go anti-cyclical to make sure that the economic growth is sustained.
What are the young presidents? We never quite got to that a moment ago.
Absolutely. Very briefly, the Young President is a network of CEOs from around the world. In order to join the network, you need to be managing a business of a particular size, both in terms of revenue as well as number of employees that are under your authority, and you need to be below the age of 45. You stay with with the organization until you are 50, at which time you transition to what we call World President Organization, WPO. So our organization is WPO, YPO, catering for members that are below 50, as well as those that are above 50 who wants to stay with it, because it's a lifelong learning organization.
So these are the people that are plotting out the kind of trends that we're seeing right now. How are you rating sustainability of this trend, Khutso? Because, over at the World Economic Forum, Africa's resilience and economic growth was certainly put in the spotlight, but also question marks around ability for Africa to sustain those kind of gains that it's made as we become more globally connected and globally integrated.
Absolutely. I think sustainability remains the biggest challenge. What is encouraging for me is first and foremost the capital spending that is going into building a foundation for sustainable economic activity. Secondly is that I think it's fair to say that from around the continent, issues around reforms, both on a physical as well as a social, political side, are being addressed to make sure that we are going to be able to sustain. Remember, Africa has got 70% of its population is less than 30 years old. And so in order for us to really make sure that this is sustained, we need to invest in the youth, we need to invest in the infrastructure. And I think gradually countries from around the continent are starting to pay attention. This is not to say that we don't have problems, but I think we are long past the days where, as the economists said, that Africa is the hopeless continent.